guys? Keith, aka Gator Guy 231. It's Monday. The world is not over, yet we still have a $100,000 prize pool between Crystal Palace and Burnley. Pretty wild for a team that loves just to avoid relegation. That's actually giving Burnley a tough time since they've been back up with Sean Dyche. They've done a great job being in mid-table, even qualified for their Europa League. But low-budget team that isn't exactly ever in the limelight, and Crystal Palace is almost always one of the more forgotten teams in England. So just crazy for that the DFS landscape is such that this game, because it falls on Monday with no other really sports going on, has this big of a prize pool for us. That said, so glad to see it. It'll be an interesting one, I think, especially if you are going to be in GPP and are trying to go for that first spot. There's a lot of interesting strategies that you're probably going to have to take today to get it. I am going to talk about some of those strategies as well as kind of project some ownerships for you guys. One of the requests that I've had from our subscribers at FSI to go over. So I surely do hope that helps. Just want to also just point out 15 damn soccer slates this weekend was insane. It was fun. I never thought I would actually be thinking to myself that there was too much soccer, but that might have been too much soccer. That said, we covered it all. Had some great results across the weekend. So if you are looking for a place to get some extra information or just be able to talk soccer a ton with some of their sharp DFS players, just be a good time. Please join FSI DFS. We'd love to have you. Link at the bottom. We still have the $40 special to the end of the European season, as well as you can just join for $10 a week. We'd love to have you either way. All right, let's jump into the game. So the first thing, we'll start with is odds per normal, and then I'm going to jump in to kind of introduce you to some of the players, like their tendencies, what you can expect from them. And then just going to kind of go into some of the scripting and ownerships. And that's going to be the show for today. So Crystal Palace, slight favorite at home, plus 131. Burnley's plus 236. Whopping 2 total. 2 goals. It's like we entered Spain or something. But I will say, I joke about that, but there was multiple games this weekend, even watching, that you're just like, this is not good football. But let's deal with what we've got. Like, pickers can't be choosers, they say. So, we've got soccer. It was much better than not having it. So not going to bitch too much about this. So let's kind of go over – actually, I want to say this. So Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, especially at night, has always been like an awesome, awesome spot. They pulled up some huge upsets. I can remember them giving City a massive game a few times ago. As a Liverpool fan, I never like when we're going to Selhurst as like a night game. All this being said, that's a lot because of the crowd, because of how the field's just on top of one another. How much of that advantage is gone with nobody? I don't know. It's hard to say. I stick by that there still is home field advantage, knowing the pitch, knowing the atmosphere, or I guess that's the wrong way to say, but knowing just like how everything feels, knowing, the surface, there's still an advantage. I just don't know if it's the full advantage it was before. But that said, I still like Palace at home. And I do think, given the structure of the teams right now, Palace is in the better position to win this game. I've looked through, a number of English pundits and papers. Most common score outcome I saw, 1-0 Palace. So just keep that in mind for what we're going to be looking like this from a DFS perspective. I'll just kind of hint this. I'm going to talk about this in scripting, but 1-0, does mean there's not a ton of fantasy points, and we shouldn't expect like scores in the 90s and 100s. It's not like a Man City slate where they're going to score 4 goals. So grabbing each point is going to be that much more important. So let's talk about each players. We'll start on the Palace side. First off, I just want to point out, this is more than this is more than likely a 4-3-3. Luka being kind of central. He is a defensive player, but being central. IU will actually be up here on the right. Zaha on the left, assuming everybody's healthy. So let's start with, well, Zaha, Palace's most recognizable player and best player that they have. So he is actually dealing with a muscle injury. He tweaked it during the Liverpool game. He was withdrawn after about like 10, 15 minutes. Um, that doesn't give me some pause on him, as does his price. But, he's a player that really, really relies on his pace, not a huge crosser. His best trait for DFS is his ability to draw fouls, just because he is such a physical player, really likes taking guys on one-on-one. So, he draws fouls. He does create opportunities, but he only has 3 goals this year. Whereas teammate Jordan Ayew has, I think it's 9 or 10. Let me double check. Should have already had this up. So my bad. But let's see. Yeah, Ayew has 9. Zaha has 3. So just to give you perspective on the upside, especially with muscle, I think that despite the name notoriety, I'm Ayew over Zaha today, if I'm going up there, and that's a big if. So that's Zaha's game, taking people on, sometimes drawing PKs and not actually getting taken himself. On the other side, Ayew, similar player, just a little bit less taking on, but more shooting and more goal scoring upside. So in the last couple of games, so here's the thing about Palace. Take everything on that Liverpool game out. Do not look at that log. Liverpool absolutely blitzed them. They're not even in the same league, talent realm as with Liverpool. It was just a perfect storm. Don't look at that game for your knowledge on this game. But before that, 3 straight games with a goal. And this goes back to March, but the game that I remember, vividly is Newcastle, where he scored 19.6 without a goal or assists, 7 shots, 5 on target. Jordan Ayew, I'm trying to think back. God, what was the team? Swansea, I believe he was on at the end of the season, like three years ago. Just went on this run where he was a kind of a mini DFS god for us. He was never that expensive, forward eligible, and would consistently get 6, 8, 9 DK without a goal or assist. So he does have DFS quality for him, especially coming on the right. That's the little bit softer side in terms of the defenders. I do think that he is probably your top upside target from the Palace side. Christian Benteke, he was another guy that's going to struggle for fitness. We'll see if he can play. If not, God, who started 2 games ago? I guess Benteke did start. So if he's back in, God, he huge guy, huge aerial target. If you look back to the Villa days, scored a ton of goals, went to Liverpool, struggled, got sold off to Palace, has kind of just continued the struggling for the finishing since then. But he is a GPP target. Again, more than likely to score with his head than his feet. But, has started to play a lot better football recently. But his job is to kind of do some hold-up play, be a target in the middle, hold up, and then get the ball out to Ayew or Zaha. So that is the Benteke's game. I do like targeting somebody like him versus small teams that don't have big center backs. That is not Burnley. Ben Mee and Jacob Tarczewski are very, very – Tarkowski. I don't know why I keep saying Tarczewski. Probably Caleb Tarczewski from Arizona. Ugh. Anyhow, teams that don't have somebody that can mark him, I'd love to have, but Burnley does have. So I probably won't do too much Benteke. I'm not going to be in this GPP a ton. I'm going to be focusing on cash, and I'll kind of explain that why soon. So the 2 top targets, kind of bearing the lead, are going to be Luka Milivojevic and Patrick Van Aanholt. Patrick Van Aanholt, I have projected to be the highest owned player on today's slate. And the reason why is he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He is the 6th highest priced player, yet his logs, again, I'm not going to even include Liverpool, which he wasn't that bad, 6.6 DK. But before then, 13.3, 11.9, 13.9, 28.5. He does have a share of sets, takes the corners down here on the left, which Crystal Palace likes to do in swinging corners. So Patrick Van Aanholt takes half. He takes free kicks. And then he also, does have some open play value of crossing the ball, especially when you do see Benteke in there, they will try to cross. So he has that, as well as defensive peripherals like tackles And then that clean sheet upside, the 3 DK you get at the end if Crystal Palace does not allow a goal, that is very live. So I have him projected to be your top owned player. Luka Milovic won't be too far behind if he starts. First off, let's just mention if he does not start, and that's James McCarthy. James McCarthy will split the corners with Patrick Van Aanholt, but if Luka Milovic starts, Luka will split the sets and has PK responsibilities, which is big. He has a lot this year. I'm not going to go through, but Wilfried Zaha always has been a guy that draws a ton of fouls, especially in the box, doesn't mind going to the ground. I used to love Wilfried Zaha, the joy he played. He kind of bitches like a Spanish player more often than not these days, but still draws fouls, kind of dives a little bit. I don't want to say dive. Goes to ground a little easier than I like for my eye. But that said, when he does get that contact, Luka's a great PK taker. So there is the upside built in that with him. But we'll take the corners over here on the right, as well as does have some defensive abilities and doesn't mind taking a long range shot too. Now Burnley's been always a team that actually will give away some long range shots, so there's some built-in points there for him. Kiate Chico, whatever. Central player, not a ton here. Maybe gets you 4 to 60K and you'd be happy with. Same with James McArthur. James McArthur does a little bit more than Kouyaté. But again, they're central guys. They don't really get wide very much. Not, great DFS targets. Joel Ward, not a fullback that likes to bomb forward. So kind of what you see on his logs is what you get. Gary Cahill, Scott Dan, last man in type of player. Scott Dan, more of an aerial threat than Gary Cahill, which only by me saying that guarantees that Cahill will probably be the one to score the goal. Okay, if we see Giata in, Giata may go way over-owned today, but even though I say the word over-owned, I say over-owned for, keeper, I don't think that I just want to take away what I just said. I don't think he's over-owned. I think he's going to be really, really popular, and I think that there's good reasons for the popularity. So let's talk. So he's 7K, which I think is way too light. I'll go ahead and do my goalkeeper stance right now. So here's the thing with goalies. Goalies have the highest range of outcomes of any position in soccer. I guess you could technically say a striker, but I would argue it's goalie. And here's the reason why. A goalie can actually very, very easily show up with -2, -4 points. They allow 2 goals. They don't get a save. That's -4. They don't have any other way to accumulate DK points. They get a few passes. That's it. If they, let's say in turn, don't allow any goals, they win 2-0, and they save those 2 shots, they are now at 14 DK. So that's an 18-point swing. If you have a goalie that shows up with 6 saves, no goals allowed, clean sheet win, he is now at 22 DK. He's pretty much scored you 2 goals. And we know, especially in this game, with a 2 total, 2 goals is like all they project for the entire game. So to get that from a goalie, you can't make that up. So biggest range of outcomes, but they're not priced that way. And that's kind of one of the big things in Showdown right now that DK is just messing up, is not pricing in the upside. Now let's look at Giata's logs and why I think he's going to be so popular. So again, I wanted to start, I started saying over-owned because I think sometimes we're getting in a situation like Courtois continues to be on these Real Madrid showdowns, 50, 55%, which I think is kind of insane to see a goalie that high owned, to be that chalky. So, I immediately in my head want to go over-owned, but I want to say he's like been clean like 3 of the last 4 games. So, is he really being over-owned when, the upside and some of Real Madrid's opponents have been that crappy? Probably not. I probably am using the wrong term for that. Just think if you're a GPP player, you got to understand those ownerships and leverage, either, going overweight or underweight. So anyhow, Giata, I really like the chances at a clean sheet. Here's the last 4 games. So he's they won 4 straight games back in before the break with him in net, and he's allowed no goals in any. 12.3, 16.2, 26.1. There's one of those outliers, and 14.2 DK. So I think that log is going to have people kind of nutso at 7K, especially given the lack of options. So I think, and I'll go to ownership in a second, but he's going to be very, very popular in the 15. So, the question becomes is, how do you leverage that? Maybe actually putting him in the captain spot where he will be less than 10% owned. Maybe that's how you do it. All right, let's jump over to Burnley, and then we'll go into some of the strategies. So Dwight Mcneil is the best player on Burnley in terms of DFS perspective. I'm not going to get into like football tactics, but, guy that splits half the corners with Ashley Westwood. So he takes the in swingers on the left, or the right, whatever you want to call it. But he takes the in swinging balls and then crosses a ton in open play too. So he is a DFS guy that we like to target. He splits them with Ashley Westwood. Now, Ashley Westwood, because he is central, all of his DFS value comes from those set pieces. And, he has a few occasional goals where he shows up late in the box, but he is the type of player similar to Luka where it's all going to be corner kick driven. Luka a little more upside just because of the PKs. Ashley Westwood does not have PKs. Your two strikers, J. Rodriguez and Vedira, they are GPP only given the matchup. J-Rod is a guy I like a lot more than Vedira. He is also struggling with fitness, so he'll be a late guy. We'll have to see if he's in the lineup. But, if you're playing like Giata, you're not going to play the strikers because if you're playing Giata, you have to get that clean sheet win to really make the equity pay off. Jack Cork literally does no DFS-ness for us. I actually want to see, in case I curse him, I truly want to just prove that my curse wasn't too bad. 18 shots all season, 29 games, 0 goals, 0 assists. His if you look back into December, his ceiling game is 6.1 DK versus Tottenham. And he's a yellow card threat too. He has actually, I guess he's not really. I always thought Jack Cork was more of a yellow card. 1 yellow card all season. It's not that bad. But 3,200, I guess he's alive, so he's in play. But, I would much rather go Josh Brownhill. So Josh Brownhill was their big signing in January. Again, big signing for Burnley is an 11 million signing from Bristol City. He actually used to take corners at Bristol City when Eliasson was on the pitch. But he actually is a good player. I've watched him a few times. Now, here's the interesting with Burnley. Burnley attacks almost exclusively down the left. Charlie Taylor is an attacking fullback. I'll go over him in a minute. And then I'd already mentioned Dwight McNeil, who loves to cross. They love to shift a lot of their attention to the left. And these guys have played that right midfield over the years. So, God, I'm blanking on the name. He plays their central midfield too. I'll find it. Oh, Jeff Hendrick. Jeff Hendrick. We've seen Aaron Lennon over there. And they both had no fantasy value and over there. The last guy that really did that much over there is sometimes Robbie Brady and then Berge Munson. So I think Brownhill's fine. I think he's only 4,200. 4,200. But he's kind of going to be one of those like 5th, 6th guys, and I don't think he's like a guy that sometimes we see a wide guy that's cheap and you go, oh, he's a must play. I don't think he's a must by any means, but he works is the way I'd say he works. I think that covers Brownhill well. Charlie Taylor is the second best fullback on the slate behind Van Aanholt. He is very much willing to go into the attack and also a good tackler. So I think, a lot of him will be game flow dependent. So he will have Jordan Ayew on the side. So he's got to be very careful about when he goes forward. He's got to be very selective on that, but he has no problem overlapping McNeil, tossing some crosses. And especially if, let's say, Palace goes up 1-0, 30 minutes in, you will see both of these guys bomb forward and throw in a ton of crosses. Ben Mee and Tarkowski both are aerial threats and solid goal threats. You also see a lot of the balls that Burnley will toss in where they actually, Tarkowski will flick on a header to Ben Mee or vice versa. So there is some assist equity built in. Matthew Lowton, really good fullback, but not so much offensive. He's a tackler. By practice, I avoid fullbacks on Wolves Zaha side. They just feel like foul machines and have a great chance at a yellow card. So I will not be playing Lowton. It makes me a little more concerned about Brownhill too, just the ability that they might, have almost too much defensive work on a guy like Zaha, pick up that yellow, and just really kick out their upside. Final guy I want to talk about, and probably one of the most important Burnley pieces, is Nick Pope. So while goalkeeper ownership for the favorites is out of control, you still see dog keepers not high enough owned. I think in some of these bigger GPPs, a lot of the times they've been coming under 10%. In a game of the 2 total, that would be a mistake. I think Nick Pope has just as big of upside as Giata, especially like Crystal Palace does not threaten us for goals. We're not worried about Palace showing up with 4 goals. It's just not their game, especially if they go up 1-0. Hodgson has no problem kind of just packing it in and just playing purely on the counter. So, if Giata is going to be 50% owned, and that Nick Pope, and you're a GPP player, and that Nick Pope is only going to be 10 or 15, that's the type of guy you want to be overweight on because, again, range of outcomes. If he concedes 2 goals and gets no saves, he's going to be -4, and that lineup's wrecked. But, let's say that it's a 0-0 game and Palace puts 6 shots on him, that's 17 DK. Nobody's scoring 17 DK in a game that there's no goals. So, you can easily see if this game is 0-0, a 2-goalie lineup is going to ship the whatever those first prize is, 25K or whatever DK. Hell, if it's a 100K prize pool, DK is probably going to want to give away 50 at some point. But anyhow, just understand those range of outcomes. Okay, let's talk about some strategies. Kind of how I want to do this is just give you a couple of score lines and just talk about what those lines would look like. So give me 2 seconds to drink something. Okay, let's talk about 1-0 Palace. 1-0 Palace, first and foremost, you would have to have Giata. A win clean sheet is worth a goal. It's 10 DK. So there's only one other goal in the game. You need the goalie. So if you think this is 1-0, you make sure you have Giata. You probably would want Van Aanholt as well, being on corners. You could get Milojevic. And then you want to figure out who's going to score the goal. Is it going to be Ayew? Is it going to be Benteke? Is it Zaha? Is it Milojevic? I would immediately say that when I hear 1-0, I would want both set takers. So I want Van Aanholt, Milojevic. I want the goalie, and then I probably would want Jordan Ayew. And then maybe run that same one back with Wolf Zaha. Now here's the thing on the other side. You absolutely, depending on when that goal is. So if that goal is in the first 25 minutes, Dwight Mcneil is probably going to end with the game with 10 plus crosses. And you're also going to see Charlie Taylor get involved, and maybe Ashley Westwood is involved. Figuring out which piece would work there, but understanding just because it's 1-0 does not mean it needs to be an onslaught, does not need to be a 5-1. If the goal is early enough, a team like Burnley is going to be pushing really hard to try to tie that game up. So a guy like Mcneil has a ton of upside. I think Mcneil is going to be a guy that I want in as many lineups as I can. Just incredibly DFS friendly. So that's 1-0. So, and if you really want to be contrarian, if that 1-0 comes from Benteke with no Zaha or Ayew, set takers, Giata, that's going to be a really contrarian type of build. 1-1, that's the one that if you have none of the goalies, you're probably going to do really well in. So that's all about having the goals. So let's say that Ayew and J-Rod are the scorers. You're going to need both to do anything. That's the type of scoreline I would not want to see, because it's harder to predict goals. That'd just be difficult. And then you'd want the set takers, and then really whoever gets the assist. So 1-1, you need the goal and the assist on both sides. Because again, this game is not going to be filled with DFS goodness. There's not going to be anybody showing up with 18 crosses. The only one that could do it is Dwight McNeil, just for what it's worth. But I don't see multiple guys in double digits. You're going to need those goals and assists. Now, Burnley wins 1-0. You got to have Nick Pope. It's got to happen. That's, he already scored a goal if they won 1-0. So you've got to have Nick Pope. You would want to have, McNeil and Westwood as the most likely. Now, there's a great chance, when you hear the goal notification, it's probably J-Rod, slight chance of Vedira, but I think there's also a really, really high likelihood that it could be a center back too. So, that's really good correlation plays with Pope. So maybe you run one with Tarkowski, one with me, and you're off and running. Finally, 0-0. I already mentioned it before when I was talking about goalies, but that could very easily have a double goalie build winning it. Each guy would already get 5 DK for the clean sheet. So any saves that they had, they each show up with 2 saves. That's 9 DK, just shy of a goal. It's going to be really hard for that many people to show up close to that. All right, so there's kind of just like some scripting ideas, and then obviously every other outcome in between. But just when I hear those outcomes, what I'd be thinking. Ownerships. So like I said, I think Patrick Van Aanholt is your highest owned player on the slate. He's closely behind, or maybe he's taken over by Dwight Mcneil. So those are the top two. From there, I would expect it to be Jordan Ayew based off of the just the recent logs and the fact of his goal scoring odds. I think people are going to look at that and just go, oh, I need him. Zaha will be up there somewhere. And, Van Aanholt and Dwight McNeil probably are pushing over 50%. Jordan Ayew maybe right there. I think Giata will be incredibly popular, maybe 40-ish%. If it's higher, I wouldn't be shocked. Nick Pope, I think, would be, half that, 10, 15, 20, somewhere in there. So I think there's a lot of ownership leverage on a guy like Pope. Zaha is not going to be far behind Ayew, probably in that 40% plus range. I think Milojevic and Westwood come next, and they're under both of those. I think there's a good chance that neither one of them shows up above 50, maybe sub 40%, just because their logs aren't tremendously impressive. I think Milojevic has a chance to be higher owned than Westwood because he's the favorite. But I do think that, and by the way, I'm just talking about GPP. In cash, you're going to see these ownerships be so much sharper. But in GPPs, where the masses are playing or just throwing one dart in, I think you have to really look at game logs to gauge these ownerships. I think those are the ownerships I really want to talk about. J-Rod will probably be, in that 30-35% range. Then I think it'll be a drop-off to Vedira and Benteke. Trying to see. Charlie Taylor, maybe he shows up in that, 20 to 30% range. Brownhill might end up getting popularity because of where his price point is at. So maybe, again, 20, 30%. But, that's kind of the guys that, you really need to focus on and where their ownerships are. Now, again, if you show up with the Tarkowski, Ben Mee goal assist combo and Nick Pope and net, you're going to ship it. So, because those guys, the center backs are just going to be fill-ins. So, you might see one of them show up at 5-10%, maybe one at 15, but nothing crazy. But that combination together, if they're both only, sub 15%, 2% have them. And then, of that 2%, only, 0.3 have Nick Pope as well, and you're off and running. So that's my guess on ownership for the slate. Again, my prediction, I'm going to stick with the English pundits. I think they're probably right here. I think 1-0 or a 0-0 game are the most common. I think Burnley really has been given a tough blow with their bench is depleted. They have tons of injuries. Their two preferred strikers, Chris Wood and Ashley Barnes, both injured. What you see with them is what you get. And I do think that they're going to struggle for goals here. So my gut feel is that I might even consider Giata in cash today. Again, Crystal Palace at Selhurst, I'm a big fan of, and we'll go there. Rubio Dimes, that's for you. Rubio Dimes, if you didn't know, Roto Grinder soccer guy, probably the one of 3 Crystal Palace fans in America. Him and Rebecca Lowe should go have a watch party together at some point. But I do hope it's a fun game. I really hope that you guys enjoy the DFS sweat. Thank you again for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, comment, all those things. Really appreciate it. And hope one of y'all ship the GPP. Let me know if you do. Would love to see it. Take care, guys. Have a great day.